I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, rescue and recovery. Taiwan suffers its strongest earthquake in 25 years, the latest on fatalities and survivors. Race for the White House. Just over 7 months and counting until the presidential election. Will the top two candidates debate? Focus on Florida. Democrats are using the state's abortion laws as a major part of their 2024 campaign strategy. And well-ordered society. Pope Francis examines the relationship between justice and peace. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Irene of Rome. Our top story tonight, panic on the streets of Taiwan as at least 9 people are dead and dozens of workers stranded following the country's largest earthquake in 25 years. The 7.4 magnitude quake hit during morning rush hour. Authorities said that they had expected a mild earthquake and did not send out alerts. The tremors triggered a tsunami warning, which was later lifted. It also led to dozens of landslides and damaged roads, bridges, as well as tunnels. The Taiwan president-elect and current vice president had a chance to visit Ground Zero and assess the damage.
The
most important thing right now is to rescue people. The rescue work is the most important. We have to check carefully how many people are still trapped. We must quickly help those who are trapped, and the wounded must be given the best medical care.
And now to the Middle East, where the bodies of 6 foreign aid workers killed by a mistake in an Israeli airstrike have been transported out of Gaza. Local media report the bodies were transported to Egypt. The World Central Kitchen and other charities have now suspended food deliveries, citing concerns over security. Today at the Vatican, Pope Francis led a moment of silence to pray for the aid workers and their families. The strike has increased criticism against Israel. The IDF says that it is conducting a thorough investigation as to how the aid workers came under fire. Well, back here in the United States, 4 pro-life advocates have been convicted of violating the FACE Act. They now face prison time and fines that could total thousands of dollars. The 4 held a protest at an abortion business in Tennessee in 2021. They joined 6 other pro-lifers who were convicted for the same protest. Well, President Joe Biden criticizes so-called MAGA Republicans as he promotes his plan to lower health care costs. This comes in the middle of a fierce presidential campaign and growing competition with former President Trump. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. As the race for the White House intensifies today, President Joe Biden went before the cameras to discuss lowering health care costs, while his main opponent, Donald Trump, challenged President Biden to discuss the nation's issues face-to-face.
President Joe Biden talks money and health care costs.
It's time that drug companies pay rebates when they increase prices faster than inflation, not just for seniors, but for every single American.
Joining the president, a man from Colorado battling asthma and struggling with his insurance copays. The president blames his political opponents for making things worse.
Now he and his Republicans in Congress want to cut Social Security, raise the age, and cut Medicare, while they cut taxes for the very wealthy again.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump on Tuesday tells a crowd in Green Bay, Wisconsin, he wants to debate President Biden. In the former president's words, to discuss in a friendly manner the problems of the country, of which there are many.
We have an empty podium right here to my right. You know what that is? That's for Joe Biden. I'm trying to get him to debate. I'm calling on Crooked Joe to debate anytime, any place. We'll do it anywhere you want, Joe.
And fresh out today, a new Wall Street Journal poll asking registered voters who would you vote for if the 2024 presidential election were held today. It reveals that former President Trump is ahead in 6 out of 7 battleground states, including Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. They're virtually tied in Wisconsin. And at a news conference in Grand Rapids, Michigan Tuesday, President Trump discussed his posting of a $175 million bond in his New York civil fraud case, preventing the state from seizing his assets while he appeals.
I'm the only one that has to put up a bond. You know, I put up a bond. I didn't do anything wrong. I had to put up a bond this morning for $175 million. I did nothing wrong. They can shoot somebody, kill somebody, and walk out of jail an hour later. How about that? Do you think that's a fair policy? That's called radical left.
During his speech today, President Biden also discussed Roe v. Wade. He said Trump brags about overturning it while he wants to restore it. The Biden campaign is banking on abortion being a driving force to help him win re-election in November. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
President Biden and former President Trump won a series of primaries for their respective parties yesterday. The largely symbolic vote further solidifies a rematch from the 2020 election. Both candidates have already secured enough delegates to lock up their respective parties' nominations. President Biden did, however, face some opposition from activists within his own party over his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And as the election heats up, Democrats are betting big again on abortion as a winning issue. They have made Florida and its abortion laws ground zero after the state Supreme Court upheld abortion restrictions. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric?
Good evening, Tracy. House Democrats recently held a high-profile event on abortion access, kicking off a 6-month effort to mobilize Florida voters and those in other states ahead of the November elections. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra claims Florida abortion restrictions are harming women and girls of all ages.
That a 10-year-old rape victim must leave her home and her state of Ohio to receive the abortion care she needs. That a 13-year-old rape victim in Mississippi starts the 7th grade as a mom because she didn't get care when she needed it.
A woman testified that her doctor could not do anything when she sought an abortion after the unborn child showed abnormalities.
When she realized her hands were tied, she asked, what I thought about going out of state. From her standpoint, she said it'd be very costly. And she's like, she could not promise me there would be any legal repercussions.
Just this week, the Florida Supreme Court paved the way for the state's 6-week abortion ban to take effect May 1st, while allowing Floridians to decide in the fall whether to enshrine abortion protections in the state's constitution. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who hosted the Democrats' field hearing, says she's confident voters will decide.
Having this amendment on the ballot is going to bring a flood of voters who believe that reproductive health care decisions should be made between doctors and patients.
Republicans are fighting back, accusing Democrats of evading the truth about abortion.
At some level, I think everyone knows the truth of what abortion is: killing of an innocent human being. The pro-abortion movement and the Democrat Party, unfortunately one and the same these days, have tried to obscure this truth
and view it as an election tactic that won't work.
Democrats are doing it, hopefully, politically, to drive their base out to vote in November and to raise more money online. It's a cynical political ploy, exploiting an issue and exploiting people's hopes and fears.
Florida is not alone. Voters will likely see abortion-related issues on ballots in a half a dozen states this fall. U.S. bishops are also ramping up an outreach effort, emphasizing the protection of human life as a top priority in their guidance to voters. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, earlier this week, Michigan became the last U.S. state to legalize paid surrogacy. Democrat Governor Gretchen Whitmer approved the measure. The Michigan Family Protection Act is a group of bills that supporters say will make it easier to start a family. The Catholic Church is opposed to surrogacy. And January, Pope Francis had this to say.
La via della pace esige il rispetto della vita.
The path to peace calls for respect for life, for every human life, starting with the life of the unborn child in the mother's womb, which cannot be suppressed or turned into an object of trafficking. In this regard, I deem deplorable the practice of so-called surrogate motherhood, which represents a grave violation of the dignity of the woman and the child, based on the exploitation of situations of the mother's material needs.
And here with more reaction is Genevieve Marnin, legislative director for Right to Life Michigan, which campaigned against the bill. Genevieve, thank you so much for your time today. So I want to get your reaction to the bill's passing, and also, what have you been hearing from others?
You know, I think it's a sad day in Michigan. We now have a 9-bill package that was just signed into law that will now legalize rent-a-womb for women to be exploited using their bodies to produce children for other people, and the potential for children to be turned into commodities. And that's really what surrogacy contracts do. Prior to these bills, Michigan allowed altruistic or non-compensated surrogacy, which allowed a friend to carry a child for a friend or a sister. But now when you add money and compensation, you create a commercial business, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate. You mentioned those surrogacy contracts. I want to go back to that. Tell us, a little bit more about those. And I know there's abortion clauses, as well as, psychological effects on both parties.
Well, you nailed the big problem with the surrogacy contracts is that almost without exception, these contracts contain abortion clauses so that the intended parents can order an abortion if the child perhaps has a fetal anomaly, maybe they change their mind, it's the wrong sex, or whatever the case may be. And while you can't force a woman to have an abortion, they can impose serious legal and financial penalties on the woman for not submitting to an abortion at the behest of the intended parent. And that's a real problem.
It certainly is. And I know there were other bills passed in this 9-bill package, other laws, that is. Tell us a little bit more about that, and how do they affect parents and families more broadly?
Well, this was a huge bill package that completely upended all of our parentage laws in the state of Michigan. These bills will now allow 2 unmarried people to contract to own a child, for lack of a better word. Donor eggs, donor sperm, you don't have to be genetically related to the child, and there's no state oversight. So that's a huge change from Michigan's previous law, which mandated that an actual legal adoption take place, which is child protective. There's state oversight to make sure that that child is going into a safe home and not being bought or sold, for example, as we saw happen with a baby surrogacy ring in California 10 years ago or so.
Genevieve, has there been any pushback to this? Do you think there's going to be maybe an appeal of sorts or any other legislative mechanism to, overturn these bills?
Well, right now, unfortunately, it does appear that they will go into effect because the way the majorities in our legislature are set up right now. I hope that at some point that people will come to the realization that surrogacy contracts and putting a woman's body under a contract is not in the best interest of families and in society. In fact, I'll let people know most of the European countries don't allow any form of surrogacy. And Michigan's previous law, the one that allowed altruistic, non-compensated surrogacy, was more in keeping with a lot of other countries like Canada, Australia, and Great Britain. So while they want to make Michigan out to be the last state to legalize paid surrogacy contracts, Michigan's previous law was more in keeping with the rest of the world, and it's much more child and mother protective.
Well, Genevieve, thank you for coming on and for your insights on all this. We really appreciate it. We're going to continue to follow this. God bless.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including escaping violence. Haiti's capital is engulfed in unrest led by gangs, and it's causing families to flee for their lives. And people in the UK, including a world-famous author, are reacting to a new hate speech law in Scotland, the impact it could have on free speech and the faithful. Thanks for staying with us. The gang violence in Haiti shows no signs of letting up. According to a new report from the United Nations, the bloodshed has forced more than 50,000 people to leave the capital city. The violence began following a massive jailbreak in late February. It led to more than 4,000 inmates being released from prison and the targeting of government institutions. Now, gunfire and tear gas fill the streets. The UN also says at least 1,500 people are dead and another 17,000 people have been left homeless. All right, now to France, where the government has cracked down on a priest who said same-sex relations are sinful. On a video posted on social media, the priest also described homosexuality as a weakness. A government official says the remarks are, quote, unacceptable, adding that the priest is guilty of hatred. Well, a new law in Scotland against so-called hate speech went into effect earlier this week. The measure makes it illegal to stir up hatred based on age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. While some are applauding its implementation, others are criticizing it, saying that it infringes upon free speech and religious liberty. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of Scotland has also been critical of the law known as the Hate Crime and Public Order Act. In a statement, the Bishops' Conference wrote, quote, there should be no threat of prosecution for expressing the belief that, for example, there are only two sexes or genders, that a man cannot become a woman and vice versa, or that marriage can only be between one man and one woman. And here to talk to us more about this new law that really has stirred up a lot of controversy is Lois McClatchy-Miller. She's a Scottish commentator and senior legal communications officer for Alliance Defending Freedom UK. She joins us now from London. Lois, thank you so much for your time today. I know you yourself are Scottish, so what are your thoughts on this new law in your home country? I understand the legislation was actually passed 3 years ago, but just went into effect on Monday.
That's right. Well, nobody likes to be hated. And as Christians, we're called to love our neighbours. So it seems on the face of it like a good law. But unfortunately, this law is so vague that it bans something, a new offence called stirring up of hate. And that is very vaguely and unclearly defined. We don't know what that really means. And what that allows is for the government to define the speech that they don't like and say that that is a criminal offence. That's a huge concern for a number of people, for comedians, for feminists, and of course for Christians who often speak truth in a society where that's not always the popular choice.
Yeah, and Lois, I know someone who is a big critic of this law is J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter. I mean, she has been very vocal about her views on transgenderism, especially on social media. Tell us what happened recently with her and one of her posts on X as it relates to this new law.
That's right. Well, J.K. Rowling is well known for her feminist tweets standing up for biological reality. And she challenged the police on the 1st of April when the law came into place. She challenged the police to arrest her, having expressed her beliefs about the trans issues and the trans movement. The police reviewed her tweets, they investigated them, and yesterday, after the investigation, they concluded that she had not committed a hate crime. Now, this is good news because she was clearly testing the limits of the law straight out the gate. She took a very bold stance, and she clarified that her exact tweet on that day was not a criminal offence. However, there is still room to be concerned. The law does not set any parameters, like I said, around the kind of speech that is banned. So we know that J.K. Rowling's tweets are fine to be tweeted, but we don't know exactly about every other belief or every other expression in every other context. So Scots like myself are still very confused, very concerned about being able to have these important conversations in society. And the law even extends offline as well, even as far as going into family homes. If parents were to discuss issues about gender or marriage, say, around the dinner table, and children thought this was hateful or were taught that this was hateful in another context and reported to their parents, they could get into trouble for having committed a hate speech offence. And of course, the penalty for this law is very severe. It's up to 7 years in prison.
I mean, this is scary stuff here. And in the meantime, there have been over 3,000 reports of hate just within 48 hours of this law being enacted. I mean, that is just astounding, Lois. You know, if police have to investigate every single case, what type of impact is this going to have on their resources in dealing with other crimes, say, you know, things like murder or theft?
It's a huge pressure on our forces. And in fact, only last month, Police Scotland declared that they would no longer be investigating over 20,000 other crimes because they simply don't have the resources to do so. And yet we're told with this new law, they will be investigating every single report made. But bear in mind, that's 3,000 just in the last 2 days. So the pressure on our forces is immense. The pressure on our society is immense. And of course, as we expected, many people are giving vexatious complaints about, things that he said, she said, things that people don't like, the views that were aired that people disagreed with. And that is, it's very akin to of old when we had things like blasphemy laws in place in our society. It was 1697 when the last time in Scotland that somebody was condemned for going against the Christian faith in that day. And of course, that was wrong. We look back now and we don't think anyone should have been condemned for just challenging the dominant views of the day. But now we've brought in a kind of reverse blasphemy law. And those who go against the popular narrative or the popular views of the 21st century can find themselves liable to penalty.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but I quickly want to get to this. We mentioned that the Catholic bishops of Scotland are also critical of this law and are concerned how it's going to impact Christians. Lois, under this law, could the faithful face jail time simply for stating what we know to be true, that there are only two sexes, male and female?
We simply do not know the limits of this law. We can be encouraged by the result that J.K. Rowling won for feminists on this issue, but we don't know how this is going to be applied in everyday context, especially when the eyes of the world are not watching one of our most famous Scottish celebrities. So we don't know, but we are always encouraged in Scripture to speak in grace and truth. We always have been, and we always must upkeep that standard of speaking in compassion, but pointing to what is true and right, no matter what the laws of our country say.
Absolutely. Lois, thank you so much for your insights. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you so much.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, respect and dignity. Pope Francis releases his prayer intention for the month of April. Plus, Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the Golden Rule and how it can bring us to lasting peace. Welcome back. Iowa just took a big step towards defending religious freedom. Governor Kim Reynolds has signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. She says the measure will protect rights that have increasingly come under attack. The Hawkeye State joins Utah, West Virginia, and Idaho in passing religious freedom protections so far this year. Pope Francis invites Christians around the world to pray that women be recognized for their dignity and value.
No le neguemos a todas estas mujeres víctimas de abuso la voz.
And his prayer attention for April, Pope Francis asks that the dignity and worth of women be recognized in every culture. He also calls for an end to all discrimination against women. And he reminds people the failure to respect women will lead to a stagnating society. Finally tonight, Pope Francis also reminds the faithful of the important relationship between justice and peace.
Abbiamo bisogno di essere uomini e donne giusti.
During his weekly talk at the Vatican, the Holy Father said that the righteous person reveres laws and respects them, and defined justice as the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give credit to God and neighbor. He added that it's important for young people to learn the value of treating others fairly, and these things can all lead to lasting peace. We thank you for watching tonight, and remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.